Hello and welcome to NMaker 4+4, our new series where we ask 4 questions to someone outside of the crypto space who has a lot of experience in a particular field and try to figure out, where, could cryptocurrencies and NFTs and blockchain in general help in that area. And today with me we have Freddy. Freddy's a very cool guy. I've known him for a while, and we get along great. So I'm very much looking forward to this interview. So welcome, Freddy. Thank you for being here. Maybe you can start by just introducing yourself and what you do, and in which area you are active as well.
Of course. Firstly, Patrick, thanks for having us on. Really appreciate that. And as you quite rightly say, we've known each other for quite some time now, and there seems to be some huge synergy here. So really excited to be able to do this with you. Look, my name's Freddie Knight. I am one of the founders and the innovation director at a specialist cyber insurance company called Optimum Specialty Risks. Now, we're an insurance company that provides cyber insurance, obviously, but we're a little bit more. So, actually, we provide insurance alongside a comprehensive risk management suite and provide sort of full educational courses and resources as well. The idea being that when an insurance broker or a client buys insurance policies from OSR, they don't just get insurance policies that sit on the shelf for them to use at a later date when stuff goes wrong. Actually, when you buy an insurance policy from OSR, you get your insurances, but you get access to tools to keep your business safe. You get access to education resources as a broker, so you can understand the risk and how to discuss it with your clients. In short, kind of a one-stop shop for cyber. Now, what separates us really from the other cyber markets in the world is that we are laser focused on that small business and personal space. So whilst a lot of the cyber insurers are happy to write these corporate and mid-market risks of $250 million revenue, actually we're much more comfortable in that sub 50 million space. It suits our expertise, it suits our model. In effect, what we have is a cyber insurance company that provides cyber insurance and cyber risk management tools to small businesses and individuals.
Thank you for that explanation. So you kind of not only do you insure, you also insure yourself by providing the people that you insure with the tools to make sure that they are safe.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so what we did find was in the market. So this business started around 3 years ago. A business that I was working for was acquired by a much larger organisation, and I opted not to go with that sale. I come and launched OSR with some friends. But at the time that we launched the business in the market, there was some cyber insurance companies that were providing risk management tools, and they were good tools, but they were, in my opinion, they were like marketing tools more than anything else. So lots of just lots of stuff that as a small business owner, I wasn't necessarily going to see value in. So the risk management package and everything that we've put together with our policy, we understand that small businesses aren't cash rich, so they're not sitting on millions of dollars worth of funds they can invest into their cyber security. The idea being now that when you buy an OSR insurance policy, you get about £3,000 worth of tools to protect your business. So yeah, absolutely, it does go some way to protecting our book and ensuring our loss ratios are sensible. But actually, what it does is it saves a small business money, and it increases their cyber hygiene without them having to part with their hard-earned cash.
Right. It always goes both ways in a way. So that's very smart in my opinion. NFTs and blockchain in my world, they're always about inefficiencies and making things more efficient by providing a global ledger essentially that everyone can access to and is transparent as in a way. So I'm always looking for, where are the inefficiencies in companies and how could blockchain potentially help solve this kind of stuff? So I'm very curious, like what do you see as the most the most inefficient parts in insurance in general, but also in cyber insurance particularly, of course. But like where are the difficulties at the moment? Where are the hardships? What is taking so long? What are you spending the most money on? Stuff like that.
There's kind of two areas for which are pressure points for a cyber insurance business. Now, firstly, in the efficiency business. So as you said, making processes more efficient. One of In reality, if we had the world's most efficient system, there's a chance that OSR would be the biggest insurance company in the world. Unfortunately, there's a lot of processes that go through, whether it's compliance processes, whether it's sales processes, terms of business agreements, policy issuance. The way in which our brokers get quotations from us is done via an online system for which you need to register, for which you need to log in and stuff like that. So, just in the general processes can be quite tricky, very time consuming. Um, but more specifically for us as insurers, really, I suppose we're looking at ways to protect our clients.
Do you see any way where we can take one of these centralized issue points and potentially remove it with a decentralized system? Like, do you see any example of that being possible sometime in the future?
In reality, absolutely yes. Look, from my perspective, I don't think there's going to be a business or a sector within the next sort of 5 years that isn't supported by blockchain or NFT technology in one way or another. I mean, the benefits are just far too vast for people to not adopt it in the next however many years. But when we look at specifics of what we could do as a sector, um, yes, absolutely. So, number one, compliance. The centralized state of compliance, you're absolutely right. Not only is it a very centralized process, but with centralization becomes an opportunity for a lot of people to make a lot of money. So I actually I spoke at an event a couple of weeks ago, or was invited to a 30-man think tank in Westminster with Lord David Blunkett, funny enough. So the whole purpose of this event was to understand ways in which the financial sector could either adopt more regulation or remove regulation to make their processes and their compliance much smoother. And what became clear throughout the process of these conversations is actually there's nobody out there supporting the people looking to regulate themselves from a positive standpoint. What I mean by that is a lot of the regulators, whether it be the Financial Conduct Authority or whoever it may be, a lot of the centralised regulators in the finance space, accountancy is the same. Their revenue models are based on fines and penalties, so it's largely the whole relationship is set on a negative tone, i.e., look, we won't provide you advice on how you can adhere to the terms of our regulation, but if you get it wrong, we will fine you.
Yeah, I agree. And just to also jump in on that, I've been thinking about decentralizing insurance for a while. Actually, before I started NMaker, I was toying with the idea of starting a decentralized insurance company, which unfortunately never happened. And maybe it's good that it never happened because I'm not an expert. I have no idea about insurance in the grand scheme of things, and you need experts like yourself to guide the way, basically. Um, but to me, if I break it down, insurance is basically just a collective of people, right, that want to combine their strengths, combine their money to protect the individual from great losses and great damages. That's kind of what it is. Yeah, and I've been thinking about, okay, how can we do this in a more decentralized way without having to rely on insurance companies to, say, okay, this claim is correct, this claim is incorrect, and so on. And without all this overhead of all the company and corporate structures behind and so on. And especially interesting, I think this is for micro insurances in non-European, non-Western countries, because I feel like the insurance market is of course huge. It's globally, it's like $1 trillion market or something like that. But in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in many parts around the world, India and so on, South America, there is a lack of insurance at the moment, and it's very very hard to get insured because people don't have enough money, so they can't maybe insure them fully, but maybe they want to protect themselves against very specific use cases that make sense for them, like I don't know, the COVID insurance thing was a very big topic in Thailand, as far as I know. And that is essentially microinsurance. You insure just against one particular case, and that, I think, it was very interesting. And in my opinion, you can make this very decentralized by simply creating a pot of money on the blockchain, and then have a sort of automatic claiming system where you say, okay, now I got COVID, but I've been insured by this big pot of money. So what do? I copy my COVID certificate that I got it or something like that, and send it in there, and then the popularity vote or some sort of mechanism, maybe even an I don't know, long term, could decide if this claim is valid or if it's invalid, and if I get the money or if I don't get the money, and stuff like that. I think are extremely interesting, and that's, of course, it's a little bit far stretched. There are many problems, I think, that better than I do, that come with this sort of mechanism. But in some cases, I feel like this might be a good approach to take in the future as well. Do you agree?
It does sound very similar to a concept we've been working on for a while. So look, you're absolutely right. The concept of insurance is when something terrible happens, it's to put the business, the person, the insured back to the state they were in before the incident happened. Now, that could mean financially, in terms of financial loss. It could mean physically, if they need to have their house rebuilt. And more recently, actually, it could mean mentally as well. So we're seeing more and more insurers, ourselves included, offering coverage for mental anguish.
That's very
So
good.
if you, yeah, absolutely, especially if your data is lost in a pretty sensitive data breach, sometimes that can have knock-on effects. So sometimes, I think the most famous one on record of that type nature was the Ashley Madison data breach.
Mm-hmm.
So that was Ashley Madison was a dating website for married people. So when the data for that was leaked everywhere, obviously everybody who was on that website had a spouse who didn't know they were dating online.
Mm-hmm.
So opinions on whether that was right or wrong is not my place to say. But you can imagine the sensitivity of that being found out, and the need perhaps for somebody to address your mental health and your mental anguish afterwards. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And my especially when you look at the cyber insurance market, Patrick, the cyber insurance market in reality is backed by only a handful of reinsurers.
Mhm.
So if you look at the property market, for instance, there are dozens of reinsurers, if not hundreds, I may believe, that are insuring different programs. When it comes to cyber insurance, you're probably, and don't hold me to the numbers, but there's about 4 or 5 that reinsure the global cyber insurance market. So obviously that has its benefits. The benefits that if something moves, something tends to move relatively quickly. It means we can adapt to oncoming threats and stuff a bit quicker than other spaces. But it also means that actually it's super centralized. And what we found over the last couple of years is with that centralization, it can become hard to trade at times. So if the reinsurers who are reinsuring, let's say, 30 different cyber insurance companies, all decide that they no longer want to provide cover for data breaches, then the market isn't going to be able to provide cover for data breaches. Now, that's a very extreme circumstance. That's not going to happen, but we've seen, and I will add quite rightly as well, these reinsurers don't make these decisions because they want to. They make them because the data and the number tells them they have to.
Right. Yeah. It's always economical. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't for 1 minute want to dismiss there are, over the years, there have been billions and billions of dollars pumped into the actuarial work that supports their actions. But in my opinion, absolutely, there is a route via blockchain and NFTs to make that a decentralized process, or at the very least, make it a decentralized pool. Almost like a liquidity pool. But instead of a pair, you have participants that participate. Instead of farming a token's rewards, you're rewarded. You're rewarded on the profitability of the insurance pool that you're committed to. So if there's no claims within that pool, perhaps once a month you get $5,000 to $10,000 back if you've put $100,000 into the pool. If, for instance, there are losses in that pool, then you don't get any of your rewards that month and they're covered by the pool. So there's There's loads of stuff to work on, Patrick. In fact, I think there's loads of stuff for you and I to work on in that space.
I agree. I agree. I think we can do great things there. And yeah, it's not really 4 plus 4 at the moment because I'm asking the questions. So I want to give you the opportunity as well. If you have something specific, feel free.
I do have one point which I think would be an interesting point to raise because this is huge in the insurance space at the moment. I can tell you from my own perspective, we've just set up our own corporate and social governance policy and the actions that we're going to be taking to support that. But one of the biggest concerns I get when speaking to non-blockchain or non-NFT people is the environmental footprint that it has. And again, quite rightly so. I'm a huge proponent of sustainability um, and the technology industry in general doesn't have a great rap for doing too well. So could you let me know, Patrick, how can the adoption or how do you see the adoption of blockchain or NFT technology being able to positively support corporate and social governance within an insurance company and within the insurance space?
I think there are two different ways to look at it from this perspective. I think the first one is essentially, does the blockchain that you're using, is the benefit of having that blockchain bigger than the environmental pollution it provides, basically? So if having Bitcoin is the worst blockchain out there when it comes to environmentally sustainability and so on. But you could argue that, okay, Bitcoin is huge, it's global, it has millions of users. Maybe the benefit of having Bitcoin around is so big that we should take this, environmental damage that Bitcoin is causing and say, yeah, that's just a drawback we get from it. And because of this, we can, I don't know, remove 10,000 ATM machines and then it's even again or something like that. I think that's the first thing to look at, and in my opinion, there are blockchains that are doing that. I don't think you can really defend blockchains that are using the proof of work mechanism at the moment, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, because it's just not very good. It's very, very environmentally damaging, and there are solutions out there which are a lot less damaging, like proof of stake, which Cardano and many other chains now as well are doing. And there are chains like Solana, which are also not producing a lot of damage to the environment. So I think when you take these blockchains, which have a relatively low output in terms of their environmental impact, and you say, okay, the benefit of having these blockchains around is so big, then that is first of all pretty good. And then you can do things like carbon offsetting to reduce that a little bit more. But in general, that's an acceptable term. And then the second part, I think, is, okay, what can these blockchains now provide, and what can NFTs particularly provide to not only have a system to make, I don't know, insurance more efficient, but also have a system to maybe reduce the environmental impact of many different systems around the world. And one obvious one that a lot of people have been thinking about is carbon offsetting as NFTs, just making a carbon offset market very available for NFTs. Another one, and we experimented at NMaker with something like that together with an NGO called Blue Number back in the day. No one knows the project, no one used the project, but it was very interesting to dive a little bit deeper into that and basically create NFTs for doing good. And then if you buy that, you are actively contributing to something, and that could be carbon offsetting. But in our case, it wasn't. It was something different. Basically, we were we were repairing a destroyed house where plants grow. I don't know the English word right now, but
Overgrown, like an overgrown.
yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. And I think that's very interesting, and you can do a lot of stuff there also in terms of tracking technology, in my opinion. Like all
Yes.
the supply chain things are extremely inefficient at the moment. Like you produce something, I don't know, in North America, and then you send it over to China or Southeast Asia, and then you send it back to Europe or to Africa and so on. So one product travels around the world just to get produced and assembled, and then it finally arrives at the destination. And on this way, it has produced so much negative environmental impact, and a lot of people aren't even aware of that. And if you could track the whole supply chain of a new product using the blockchain, which is being done a lot already, and which will be
Yep.
done even more in the future, I think, then you have like specific, like you have the specific route on there, and every consumer can just look up the route that the project, not the project, the product has taken, and say, okay, this is too much for me. I don't want to support this. I'm going to buy a product which is produced in the US, and I live in the US, so I'm just going to stay in the US and not have such a big environmental impact with the products that I buy. And I think the overall mood of the consumer landscape is changing towards that direction. Just what's missing is basically the information. Like, people are not empowered to actually do what they want to be doing, because they have no way of accessing this information. And now if you want to learn, okay, which products should I buy, then you have to do a lot of research first, and you have to learn, Nestle might not be the best brand to buy products from if I want to
Yep.
live sustainability and or focus on sustainability and stuff like that. And it's a lot of work. And I think we can take away this work by just making it accessible and storing it all on a blockchain, and then giving people the tools to decide for themselves in a way.
Yeah, mate, I totally agree. In all honesty, I recently bought a shirt by an NFT project called Origins Thread, or I think Thread of
Ah,
Origin, or
nice.
Origin Thread. Yeah,
Mhm.
and in short, that is created in India via the blockchain. You can trace that every way to the way that it's then manufactured in London. You can see exactly the outputs that it's doing. You can see the where the materials were manufactured, where they were farmed, and stuff like that. And yeah, so I feel your pain there, because a couple of years ago I actually went through this process of making mine and my girlfriend's life more sustainable. So we all of the energy in our house is done by renewable energy. A lot of the clothes and the food that we buy, we sort of readdressed to make sure that we were doing our bit. Um, but the process, Christian, was really hard. Do you know what I mean? For me to find out where some of these pieces of clothes were being made, some of my food was being made, what environmental effect they were having, was really hard to do. So for that to be made easier, especially in the current climate, I think would be super cool. Now, there's actually an element of insurance that touches on that. So there's a huge insurance market called the management liability, or directors and officers liability insurance. And in short, I'm not an expert in that field, so there will be plenty of people from the insurance industry telling me how I've got this wrong. But in short, it's covered to protect directors and executives of a business on a personal level for decisions they may or may not take in their business capacity. Now, if an individual or a group of individuals decides that they would like to litigate against um, one of our insureds under a management liability policy because of their environmental footprint, or because they're having a negative effect environmentally, well, actually, look, the adoption of the blockchain tech here would resolve that entirely, which is interesting, super interesting. Again, we've got a long way to go before I personally, I think we've got a long way to go before these are considered by the powers that be in the space. But there are some fantastic real world applications like that are just itching to be introduced to the insurance market.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think it's a lot more work than people expect it to be. Sometimes it always takes years until you get something like this done. But it's also extremely rewarding. Like, the upside is just so big if we can get everything on the blockchain, or not everything, of course, but a lot of the things which we are having troubles with right now, we can solve so many problems, and that's what it's about, right?
Can I ask you, please, from my perspective as a cyber insurer, what applications do you see NFT or blockchain technology having, or what benefits does NFT and blockchain technology have when it comes to securing and managing your personal and business critical data? Because for me, there's a huge opportunity there. I mean, look, just from our own claims data, the amount of times we have conditions in our policies that requires our insureds to back up their business critical data offline. But even so, the amount of notifications that we see where those backups either haven't been done properly, or they have the backups have been infected themselves, or the location that they were stored in perhaps wasn't secure enough to manage that sensitive of data. So yeah, I suppose the closing question for me, Patrick, is what use cases or what application of blockchain or NFT tech do you see that would be able to provide small businesses and individuals with a more secure way of managing their data than is currently available?
So to me, the blockchain is not a database. You cannot use the blockchain to store large sums of data on it. Basically, that's not what it's designed to be. The blockchain is a way to timestamp things first of all and authenticate data. So what I think the blockchain would help in this area would be, okay, every time a backup is created, we create a hash of that backup and put it on the blockchain, timestamp it, make it available to everyone. Say, okay, look, we have backed this up right at this date, and then we have done the next backup at this date, and then we have done the next backup at this date. And you can create basically a line of different transactions on the blockchain which all reference themselves. So it's basically it's like a blockchain inside a blockchain. Um, and they all base off of each other. And you can say, okay, where has the data, for example, been tampered with? And if somewhere in between something has been done wrong with the data, and the data has been changed or something like that, you can see this immediately because the hashes of all the following backups will basically change. So I think that's a very, very important thing to do. And it's also very good, especially for insurers, because you as insurance company, you know exactly, okay, at this point, my client has backed up their data, and then he has backed up his data again 2 days later, and then 2 days later again. And you can prove that they don't tamper with the data. So when, I don't know, the government comes, or the police, and they want to see some sort of backup or so, you can show it to them and say, okay, we can prove to you that we haven't changed any data and that we backed it up in regular intervals. So for you, that probably makes it a lot less risky to operate with this sort of company that is using such a system, because you can authenticate as an insurance company it yourself, and thus maybe offer them lower rates for insuring themselves and stuff like that. I don't know the economics around that, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, even as you're saying that, Patrick, I'm thinking how a cyber insurance policy works is, yes, you get the insurance policy, but actually you get access to a team of cyber emergency responders, forensic investigators who then work out how the claim initiated, what needs to be done to make sure it doesn't get worse and stuff like that. And actually being able to have access to an unamendable ledger could save these guys hours and hours, perhaps
Yeah.
sometimes even days worth of time. And as you'll know yourself from your experience in the Web3 space, actually when stuff goes wrong, the speed of response to that initial notification is essential. I.e., if we leave it for a day, 2 or 3, from an insurer's perspective, the claims costs can go by 10 or 20 times. It's
Yep.
imperative for us as insurers that A, we can access those backups quickly, or B, we can spot any anomalies in the regular process quickly. So yeah, absolutely, that'd be an application. And thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, honestly. Maybe we should do something in that area.
Again, Patrick, it sounds like we've got an awful lot to talk about, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, so Freddie, I guess we're at the end already. We spoke a lot. It wasn't very clear cut, 4 questions, 4 answers, and then the other side, but was more like a conversation, which I like. I think that's how it should be going. So thank you very much for having this conversation with me, and thank you for being here today. I think it was very interesting, and yeah, hopefully we get to talk a lot more in the future.
Cheers, Patrick. Really appreciate that, mate. Thank you.